ħafna djar, anke jekk mhux il-belt dejjem sabiħ, anke tidħol f'ħafna djar.
At least when they've
Fil-qalba
done theirs,
tal-irħula.
they know how to do it
tidħol
here.
fil-djar
So that's
bil-spazji. Il-belt taf kemm għandna spazji għadhom imkissrin. Le jisla per min jafxtar inti, mela? No, mhux għalhekk qed ngħidlek. Kullum jasra, tajjeb li napprezzawhom dawek, nkunu proud bihom għax għandna biex, vera għandna biex.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
It's elastic, so you can.
Intom orajt, kif intom? Kollu sewjew. Biżi ma forsi ċ-ċentru ta' kollox jidher. Mhux hekk, mhux hekk. L-enerġija, l-interconnector, kif to be honest, when I think about it, issa vera, jien taf li nara kollox, so jekk tara fejn huwa l-isperanza ta' ħafna meħżena mak fuq livell ekonomiku u anke decarbonization affarijiet nifissat fihom, ma qegħdin tal-interconnected, u tiskanta kemm in-nies għadhom m'għandunawx li teżisti l-kumpanija għadhom from a brand point of view, x'kaħt għadhom l-enemartom nafx jgħidu. But actually that's where it is. U in a way, keeping it low key, sure, force is not a bad idea. Otherwise, you attract lots of attention, spiċċaw naħlu l-ħin uqdhom imparlaw. Ħanajt hello Lorenzo, ta? Thank you.
Iġveri din tal-PCI, kawtu, imma jina iġveri meta jistaqsi.
Madonna, x'din ta' issa. Imma you promised me, eh? You owe me. You owe me. Kif inti għaj?
Next to you, I saw. How are you?
Għandi bżonna bdejtek ftit. Għandi bżonna anzi, għandi bżonna bdejtek ħafna.
Wow, tight.
Konferenza.
It's warm in here.
Yeah, it's too much.
Inna l-ġimma ġeja li segu. L-ġimma twila, eh?
Then Lartel asked me if I could post something.
Yes, it feels very much like a student hotel.
All right.
So
Hey, for camera.
Multitasking.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's too hot today.
But you don't have to wear a jacket.
True, I already took off my second
But when I arrived yesterday, I just thought, okay.
Hey, viva naf il-union, so.
Absolutely, you don't want to stay.
Slightly sweaty.
Leaving after.
I'll see how interesting it is.
I'll probably stay till coffee break, maybe the second coffee break. The last bit is about
the last one I wasn't sure either if it's so relevant for me. But we'll see, yeah.
It's also late because then it's 1 o'clock. It starts, I think. And then it's like it'll probably be like 2 o'clock by the time I get back. Hey, all right. You know each other.
Hi, Suzanne. Suzanne Mass, Friends of the Earth.
Joseph is in charge of the, or at least technically, of the interconnector.
All right. Okay. So on the same panel.
The good one.
Yes. Yes, I saw there are no questions about the pipeline. So
Yeah, I know.
let's see. Well, I will mention it anyway, but
Għalek inta għawna jlek. Għax għandi plan B, ma. Għandi għafem. Ġvera. Eżat. Naqfu. Imma jt najdilkom biħu. Bonġu.
Ja, so was you said again.
Ma mux bas il-ġurnata qalbi, imma meta ma tina l-bibin kollha ma tnajt ħana biex ġoħra, mhux hekk. Imma. Ħana qed nagħmel xi ħaġa. 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 Ħana qed nagħmel xi ħaġa.
A very good morning to everyone from the Grand Salon at the National Museum of Archaeology in Valletta, Malta. Allow me to introduce Honorable Parliamentary Secretary, Dr. Chris Bonnet, Mr. Lorenzo Vella from the European Commission representation, Ms. Celine Gawe from the European Commission, other familiar faces from the European Commission, but other stakeholders, including the Principal Permanent Secretary in Malta, Mr. Tony Sultana, and other key stakeholders who are going to join us this morning to take stock of the recovery and resilience plan almost in the third year now. So today what we're trying to achieve during the next 2-3 hours is trying to understand and fully acknowledge the achievements we achieved so far together, but also discuss the challenges and possibly the tweaks we might need to focus on in the next few years to truly achieve the targets and milestones outlined in the RRP program for Malta. With that, allow me to remind all our attendees that this is going to be broadcasted on social media. It's going to be recorded, and of course, feel free to just share your thoughts later on during the 3 panel discussions discussing the green transition, skills, and other aspects of the RRP. Of course, many of you are well acquainted with what the RRP is. However, only a few months ago, I believe, I met a 70-year-old in a small primary school in Malta. She was holding her beloved nephew to school, and she was telling me just outside the school, unknowingly, how the EU funds helped her beloved 7-year-old turn from a poor reader to an outstanding reader, thanks to the Recovery EU, in less than 20 weeks. This is truly remarkable, and we managed to tell her story following that on national TV and other media outlets in Malta. However, some of us here were also possibly beneficiaries of EU grants to transform our fossil fuel vehicles into electric vehicles, and that's thanks to Recovery EU as well. These are only 2 examples of how RRP is tangibly and concretely helping us not only transform our economies and societies to become greener and more digital, but also later on we're going to see how it is trying to help us reskill and upskill our labor force. And to do that, we have some key people representing some major social partners here in Malta. With that, I'd like to introduce the head of the European Commission representation in Malta. He's been working in various roles within the European Union and the Maltese representation to the EU in Brussels until a few months ago, who was the Deputy Permanent Representative for Malta to the EU. Since May, he's now the head of the European Commission representation in Malta. I'm really honored to introduce you, Mr. Lorenzo Vella.
Good morning, Honorable Dr. Bonnet, Ms. Gower, Ms. Grillo, Principal Permanent Secretary, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the European Commission representation in Malta, I would like to welcome you all to the 2nd annual event on Malta's Recovery and Resilience Plan. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the Government of Malta for supporting my team in organizing this event, and to the many Commission colleagues who traveled from Brussels to our islands to be here in person. Greeting also goes to the viewers who are watching this event live on social media from the comfort of their home or office. When Commission President von der Leyen visited Malta and Gozo a few weeks ago, she stated that Malta needs to combine its strong growth with a sustainable use of its natural resources. The EU's investment plan, the Next Generation EU, is investing more than €330 million here in Malta and Gozo. So in a nutshell, this is what this event will essentially be about. A discussion on how to square the objective of growth for Maltese businesses and the well-being of Maltese people, with the need to prioritize sustainability and invest in future-proofing. We will have the opportunity to ask ourselves and ask one another, and hopefully answer, whether the Recovery and Resilience Plan, together with other EU funding instruments, is helping to deliver a greener, more skills-rich, and more dynamic Maltese economy. Is this plan helping to spearhead a more circular, more sustainable, more inclusive growth model? If yes, that's excellent. If not fully, then we have to discuss as to what we should adjust, what should we prioritize, where should we add effort, and where should we concentrate. I am very happy that we have the best possible audience and the best possible panel speakers for this debate here today. I thank all of you for investing your time and effort in preparing for this discussion. I cannot wait to hear from my Commission colleagues, the public administration, social partners, experts, and NGOs. I wish you all a great annual event this year, and hopefully more to come in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lorenzo Vella, for setting the tone for the rest of this annual event, the flagship event on RRP in Malta. I'd like to introduce now the Director for the Recovery Task Force within the European Commission, the Director General. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Céline Gawe.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure to be here with you in this absolutely beautiful venue, a bit hot though, but really, really beautiful venue, and to discuss the Recovery and Resilience Plan. I think we are all together moved by our common interest into this plan in half of its lifetime, because we have now reached, as Lorenzo just recalled, half of the lifetime for the implementation of the plan. And it is a very good occasion then to take stock and see how are we faring with implementation here in Malta, but also more broadly in the EU. How is the plan able to answer the challenges that were at the outset, like the recovery from the COVID crisis, but also all the many challenges that have come our way since. The war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, and now the war in the Middle East. What is it doing for citizens? How is it helping business to cope? And how is it helping the economy to transition to a more green and more digital economy and society? What is working well? What could be working better? And it is not something that just the Maltese authorities and ourselves, despite our excellent cooperation, can do. It's something that requires all of you to be there with us and to help us. And that's why I am, like the previous speaker, very happy to welcome the stakeholders, the social partners, the NGOs, all those who will make this plan happen. It is, again, not only a public-driven exercise. Let me start with a few good news for Malta, but also for the rest of the EU. As we stand today, all the plans have been approved, the 27 plans. But also, very importantly, all the Repower chapters are being negotiated, and half of them have already been validated or will have been validated by the end of this week by the Council. Malta was one of the very first one to table the plan and to have it approved, which is really excellent news. But in addition to this planning effort, we also see the implementing effort in full speed. And we have to date already disbursed 175 billion euro to support business and citizens in the transition. So it's not only about planning, it's very, very much in the middle of the implementation. And numbers are nothing if we don't look behind. So what's behind those numbers? A lot of really tangible achievements already, starting with a lot of reforms that are already today changing the life for citizens and businesses. Just to mention a few, look at the labor market reforms that we see in Spain or Croatia that do provide better quality jobs and better opportunities to skills for workers there. Look at the health reforms that are being carried out in Slovakia or Estonia, and then try to really make the health systems more resilient to face challenges similar to the one that we have experienced in the last years. or look at the anti-corruption reforms that are being passed in Czechia, in Malta. I'll come back to that in a moment. So all of this is already producing tangible results. And that goes together with the investments that are already at an advanced stage of implementation in many member states. Citizens already see their living with energy efficiency renovation for hundreds of thousands of homes throughout the continent. So their habitation changing, their mobility changing with more public transport, with also more e-vehicle, as was just mentioned by Lorenzo. And we also see that in their works, better workplace and better skills and better access to the labor market. So all of this is already happening and is already producing results. And Malta is no exception if we zoom in more closely to this country. The plan was an excellent plan, remains an excellent plan. Almost 70% of the expenditure dedicated to climate, which is very much aligned with the massive challenges that the island is facing. It is addressing all the elements from building to transport to energy production and consumption. And together with the Repower EU chapter just adopted, it is providing the beginning of very good answers to those challenges. It will very soon, hopefully, contribute to reducing the dependency to imported fossil fuels that create a real vulnerability for the island. It is also a very good plan on reform, and we are, for Malta, like for the others I mentioned before, very happy to see that already reforms on anti-corruption, on rule of law, on the independence of justice, or on anti-money laundering have been passed and are producing effects. It is no surprise in that context that it only took a year for Malta to emerge out of the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force, which is a very good news. So progress is there, progress will continue. It's not going to be easy because implementation of reform is never easy, finalization of reform is never easy, and investments are challenging to implement in a very short timeline that we have. But this is why it is so important to be here together and see how we can make the best of this huge opportunity that is provided by the plan. So, ladies and gentlemen, now three important panels ahead of us this morning. One on the green transition immediately to see how we can step up green energy and limit the use of energy. The second one on skills, where I think 87% of business in Malta says that one of their main impediment to competitiveness is the lack of adequate skills, so really an important topic to tackle. And then access to EU funds, because all of this support is only great if it can be tapped into. So, ladies and gentlemen, very much looking forward to this interesting discussion. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much to Ms. Celine Gauer from the European Commission. She acknowledged the beauty of this outstanding room in Valletta. Somehow, as you might have already noticed, it still works in progress, and similarly to the RRP. The next speaker will definitely outline the achievements and the works in progress with regards to the implementation of the targets and milestones. We're really honored and pleased to have with us today Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for EU Funds, Chris Bonnet.
Thank you, Madam Director General, my friend, Head of the Commission Representation in Malta, Lorenzo Vella. Good morning. When we say welcome to sunny Malta, we mean it. Even though it's November, yes. But that's it. This is our beautiful country, and this is why our country is beautiful. Good morning to each and every one of you this morning here today. History is not a record of the past, but really and truly the architect of our present and the silent steward of our future. We meet in this fantastic place, the Museum of Archaeology, amidst the grandeur of bygone eras and the story that spans literally millennia, from the enigmatic Neolithic times to the industrious Punic Age with the Phoenicians.
The building itself housed the Knights of St. John as the Auberge of Provence, another fine example of our historical resilience as a people. Indeed, the whole city itself, where we are, is a result of our forefathers seeing a threat, overcoming that threat, and seeking ways to bounce back better than before. After the Great Siege in 1565, Valletta was built to fortify this peninsula and ensure that Malta could be better defended against future attacks. European aid played a pivotal role in the construction of this city, with various European partners helping the Knights fund their plans. So I'm sorry to say the European Union wasn't the first to provide European funding to Malta. Today's scenario is obviously quite different, but one cannot help but draw some parallels to what we are doing actually here today. Just as the walls of Valletta rose from the rubble of conflict, fortified by the solidarity, as I said, of our European partners, today we stand united once again, amidst another kind of siege. One not of cannon and fire, but of biology and climate. A global pandemic that has tested the fabric of our society, and the specter of climate change threatens our very way of life. Yet, in the shadow of these trials, as Europeans, we have given birth to the Recovery and Resilience Plan, our modern bastion, designed not to shield us from the turmoils of the past, but to prepare us for tomorrow's tests of sustainability and resilience. The RRP is an example of collective foresight, catalyzed not just by recovery, but an avenue for a rekindling of the Maltese spirit in the wake of adversity. The 328 million euros allocated to us under the RRP have been aligned with our government's objective to give a vital pulse to our society and push it forward in these challenging times. Healthcare, once pushed to its limits up to a few years ago, has seen rejuvenation through investments in the state-of-the-art technology and infrastructure, ensuring that every Maltese citizen can access world-class medical care. Education, the cornerstone of our future, has been revolutionized with digital tools and innovative teaching methods, ensuring that our youth are equipped for the opportunities and challenges of the 21st century. And it was a pleasure for all of us to have the President of the Commission, Ms. von der Leyen, visit with our Prime Minister the new school in Nadur, which is not merely just the rebuilding of a school, but it is a school that takes us forward, a school that is climate friendly, a school that will see PV panels powering it, that is seeing water being retained to be used again and using other forms of alternate energy, not because we need a backup, but because that is where we want to go. Industry and tourism, pillars of our economy, have also been bolstered by this plan. Small businesses, the lifeblood of our communities, have been empowered with digital tools and resources, enabling them to thrive in a rapidly evolving global market. Through this, we have not just recovered, we have reinvented the way we do business, the way we learn, and the way we care for our people. Yet, the Recovery and Resilience Plan has done more than just reignite our sectors. It has infused our nation with the energy to transform, the energy to innovate and adapt, which resonates through our reforms and investments. It's the kind of energy that doesn't just power machines, but ignites the Maltese resilient spirit, the enthusiasm to embrace change and to turn aspirations into concrete action. As we chart our course forward, bolstered by REPowerEU, we have also transformed the way we look at the production of energy, our fuel for tomorrow. The REPowerEU initiative marks the next phase of our transformative journey, channeling the collective strength of Europe into the foundations of our national energy infrastructure. And it is indeed our pleasure to note, to hear this morning, that our REPowerEU plan was one of the first ones to be approved. It's not because this is a race and we have to be the first to be approved, but the mere fact that it was one of the first plans approved shows that this government has the right strategies in place, has the right vision in place, and has a European vision in place. And that makes it easier to negotiate these plans with the Commission and have them approved as the first. Being part of the first, even if it's not a race, also makes us proud. So why not? We aim to bolster the robustness of our energy grid and to invest in modern ways to produce, distribute and store energy through a future-oriented approach. We will invest in supporting the deployment of renewable energy and innovative battery storage solutions. Our investment in battery storage technology will allow us to capture and store the energy we generate, smoothing out the supply and ensuring that renewable energy is not just a backup, but a constant, reliable source of power. This goes hand in hand with the modernization of our energy network, the backbone of any modern economy. The implementation of REPowerEU will see us laying down kilometers of resilient cabling and modern substations to ensure further reliability and efficiency. We are reimagining and reinforcing our grid. We are preparing for the surge that comes with a large economy and meet the energy demands of tomorrow and power both industries and homes. We stand at the crossroads of history, challenges and opportunities. Our strategies echo the foresight of those who came before us. We too are tasked with safeguarding our people, not just from the economic and the actual climate issues that we have today, but those of the future. Yet, as with all ambitious plans, we encounter challenges and complexities in implementation. A constant evolution in technology and the need to keep pace with rapid shifts in landscapes will always be present. We must also recognize that our journey towards recovery and resilience is a shared one. The success of the Recovery and Resilience Plan hinges on the unwavering collaboration among all stakeholders, government entities, the private sector, community leaders, and our European partners. It is this synergy, this collective mission, that transforms plans into action and vision into reality. Today, we have representatives from all stakeholders, keen to connect and share their thoughts on the different approaches. I encourage you all to engage in an open dialogue, exchange of ideas, and build each other's strength, not just today, but even outside these walls. As a person who has an opinion as well, I will also pass, now that I have the opportunity, my little pieces of thoughts that I have in my head in the implementation of the RRB plan. The RRP was created as a response to the pandemic, where at the time, the most important topics on the agenda of the European agenda were health and restarting our economy. Going green and digital was and is the way forward. But in my opinion, the Recovery and Resilience Plan needs also to be able to be dynamic. It is good, it has milestones and targets, which has helped me as Parliamentary Secretary for European Funds keep other colleagues in the cabinet and our public entities to task, because we have very tight deadlines that we have to keep to. But things have changed. Since the RRP was launched, we have had 2 wars. One in the Ukraine, and now, unfortunately, we have one in the Middle East once again. Priorities shift. They don't change, they shift. So from green, now suddenly we had a high demand for energy, and REPowerEU was the first response to that. But something that I would suggest is that as European partners, we can discuss on ways on how the RRP can be even more dynamic. Now, not just to recover, but also to be resilient and make sure that Europe moves forward together. That is my little comment. So now I will leave you to your work. Unfortunately, I would have loved to stay here today, but this is budget week in Malta. The past week has been quite hectic, and we have a very important meeting of the Cabinet of Ministers today, so I have to attend to that meeting. But I thank you so much for the help that you have given our government in the planning and implementation of this plan. So I will always be thankful to the Commission for receiving us whenever we needed something and being honest in its criticism and the approach that we have with each other. And obviously, the success of this plan is due to the fact that we have excellent human relationships that have been built, not just from a professional level, but as I said, on a human level. I wish you all the best of luck with the rest of the day. And once again, thank you for helping us carrying out this fantastic plan, which is called the Recovery and Resilience Plan. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Honourable Parliamentary Secretary Chris Bonnet, for his introductory remarks. With that, we're going to give you an idea through an audiovisual short clip of how RRP is helping shape economies and societies all over Europe. Let's watch. So during the first panel discussion, we're going to focus on the green transition. You've already heard a lot about Repower EU, possibly the most recent novelty within the RRP. We're going to focus on that and possibly the challenges that Malta is facing to blend its energy transition and try to move towards a greener energy. And to do that, we have 5 distinguished panelists. I'd like to introduce them and take a seat straight away. Celine Gower, Director General of the Secretary General of Recover. So Celine, feel free to just have your pick. Mr. David Schwirep, Chairperson of MCSD, the Malta Council for Economic and Social Development. Dr. Engineer Joseph Vassallo, he's the Division Manager of Interconnect Malta. Thank you so much, Dr. Vassallo. Professor Luciano Mulestagno, he's the Director of the Institute for Sustainable Energy at the University of Malta. Dr. Suzanne Maas, she's the Climate Campaign Coordinator of Friends of the Earth Malta. Thank you so much, Dr. Suzanne Maas, as well. Before we start the discussion here, feel free to just share your thoughts later on. We will have an allocated time at the end of this panel discussion. We do have an interactive Slido, and we have a question possibly to try to better understand what's your take on the biggest, what comes to mind when we speak about green transition in Malta. So feel free to just, I'm going to just do it with you as well, slido.com. So just write slido.com on your web browser, on your smartphones. Enter your code. It's hashtag MTRRP23. And here you go, the first question. What, in your view, is the main challenge to Malta's green transition? So we're going to create a public cloud. So I know it's challenging to find one single word. Of course, voting is anonymous. So far, we've got overpopulation, time, infrastructure, renewables, culture, pollution, transport, infrastructure, overpopulation, time, insularity, geography, comfort, regulation, economies of scale, politics, ambition, money, congestion, greed, demographics, construction, space, and well, so far possibly we're agreeing that transport, construction, and overpopulation are possibly the most mentioned challenges to Malta's green transition. With that, I'm going to just ask Celine straight away. Celine, you have this privilege, if I may, that you're just visiting Malta. You're, of course, observing the implementation of RRP in Malta from Brussels, but possibly you can give us an objective view of why Malta is facing, what are the main challenges that Malta is facing to achieve the climate neutrality targets, and this famous, among other things, climate neutrality by 2050.
Thank you very much. And indeed, some of the challenges are specific to Malta, some are very, very common to all the other member states. I think the main one I see is the need to decrease dependency over important fossil fuels. And that in Malta, we still see a very high level of subsidies for fossil fuels. There is not yet a targeted approach to the most vulnerable households or business, but still a really broad brush subsidies to consumption of fossil fuel. And this is undermining essentially the need to address the real challenges, which are not only the price and the dependency that fossil fuel generate, but more importantly, the need to reduce consumption. So energy efficiency, for me, energy efficiency is absolutely critical. And if you don't have price signals for the reduction of consumption, then why would you reduce your consumption? And why would you invest in the real solutions like a renovation of buildings, insulation, and decrease of consumption? So energy efficiency. Renewables, I think renewables only account for 12% of Maltese energy consumption. This is extremely low, much lower than most of the other member states. Admittedly, insularity, overpopulation, space that are here on the screen seen as challenges make it difficult, but they do not make it impossible. Look at sun. I think here it's summer again. I think it was winter when I left Brussels yesterday. So you have sun and you have possibilities without installing large solar farm to have to make the most of the sun that is available here. Wind is also a possibility. But that, of course, links to storage and grid, which, as we could see last summer in Malta, are an issue. So energy efficiency, renewables, grid and storage, and finally also transport, indeed. Congestion is the first thing that struck me the first time I came to Malta. So how can you have so many traffic jam in such a small island? So something on congestion, which is not only replacing existing cars by clean cars, so electric cars, but also more importantly, looking at collective transport, efficient, reliable, frequent public transport to reduce the congestion and facilitate the daily life of citizens and also the competitiveness of business.
Celine, thank you so much. You mentioned solar energy. I know that Dr. Vassallo, he's working on several projects in this regard. Possibly he can enlighten us with what's going on with regards to exploiting this opportunity and other projects, including offshore projects.
Right. Interconnect Malta is working on a number of projects which are most related to the integration of renewable energy sources. So the percentage of renewable energy sources is to increase in the future, and there are ways of helping its integration. One project.
Celine mentioned 12%. What's your take on that? Do you agree that it's extremely low?
It's increasing. It's increasing. It's increasing steadily. It's actually beyond the current target we have. So, but again, we are working on ways of strengthening the network to be able to integrate much more than that. So when it comes to, for example, a second interconnector is one of the projects we're working on. This will, first of all, it will help also to serve as a backup for the first one. Malta is an island, and interconnections are essential for its energy supply, and also to integrate large-scale renewables. As we are with our current network and generation capabilities, without interconnections, Malta would not be able to sustain large-scale integration of renewables. So that's the second interconnector will definitely help with that. It will also help with the increasing demand for electricity, of course, but it will also serve to stabilize the grid and make it more resilient when it comes to large scale.
And avoid the power cuts we had last summer.
Well, the interconnection is a source of energy. Okay. It's not actually implemented with the distribution network itself. So it's a different matter which is tackled by the DSO, the distribution system operator. We are looking more at sources and how to utilize better the renewable energies, for example. So apart from the interconnector, we're looking at a project which is funded, in fact, by the RRP, which is a battery energy storage to be located in Marsa, in the location of the former power station at Marsa, which is, I think, very significant because we're going from fossil fuel directly to a clean source or utilization of clean energy from the batteries. And the idea there is that renewables are fine, but they are available only when the meteorological conditions are right. So solar energy is available only during the day, and wind energy, for example, is available only in specific times when wind is available. So there will be times when there's cloud cover, for example, or there's no wind. But so we are to consider that renewable energy is what we need, but at the same time it's intermittent. And to help with this intermittency and to be able to dispatch plant and to purchase electricity from the interconnections, I mean, according to a plan, one would have to store energy. And so the battery storage, both at Marsa, and there will be another bigger one at the Lemara power station as well, those two together will store energy, and energy which might otherwise not be used from renewable energy, and then use it at a later time when the grid requires it, or when it's, for example, it will help even with the dispatch of local plant, which means that then even carbon dioxide and efficiency will be lowered even more. So, yes, that's one way of how we're looking at helping the integration of much more larger scale renewables.
So possibly the most important project is the second interconnector, if I'm not mistaken,
well,
right?
It is a project which is ongoing. The interconnector is due for completion in 2026. And we are already at a stage of issuing tenders for its implementation. So it's something that we are working very hard on at the moment, the teams at Interconnect Malta. And it's something which is very immediate. But also immediate and also due in 2026 is the battery energy storage systems.
Okay, so Ms. Gower, so this battery storage facility is one of the possibly tangible projects that Malta is undertaking with regards to greening its energy system. In your view, what does it take for Malta to truly, in a long term, green its energy system?
I think storage is indeed needed for the very reason that was just explained, that you need to cope for the intermittency of renewables energy. So that storage, grid reinforcement, and actually the RRP and the Repower EU chapter is throwing sort of 70 million into the strengthening of the grid, because it is key. Then rollout of more renewables, and the permitting reforms that we see now also in the plans will be critical. It has to be faster to install renewable energy, and then decrease, of course, of the overall consumption, because it's not only about injecting more electricity, it's also making sure it's green electricity and that it's only used for what is absolutely necessary, so that you decrease the overall consumption by energy efficiency in buildings, where we see here that we have a lot of needs, because buildings were not built with that in mind. And here again, we mentioned the schools already that are undergoing very significant renovation, but much more is being done. So more than 50 million is going into this. So schools, public buildings, private business, offices, and also private homes will have to undergo those renovations. It's also a way to fight against energy poverty, which is actually much better than subsidizing fossil fuel, as is being done today. So I think it has to be really from all the angles. Interconnectors is useful, electricity interconnectors is useful, then storage, renewables, energy efficiency to reduce consumption. And if you look at it from all of these angles, it's not one single solution. It is a combination of all of these efforts, which hopefully are sufficiently accelerated by the plan.
I'm sensing somehow that you're skeptical of the government's subsidy position, because if not mistaken, the government is forking out around 800 million euros a day to subsidize the increased energy costs.
I think this, and this is consistent with the recommendation that we made in the context of the semester. It is indeed, it was a necessary immediate crisis solution in the peak of the energy crisis. But if we look ahead, I think it is not helping in reducing the consumption. It is creating or bringing a toll on the public finances, which is a problem. And it's also money that is much better used in greening the energy mix, which, as we discussed already, is absolutely needed for Malta.
Perry Chwirep, I know that you're sitting here as chairperson of the Malta Council for Economy and Social, MCSD, known as the MCSD, all social partners, an umbrella organization representing all social partners. However, on the sidelines of your hectic life, because I know that you lead a very hectic life, you managed to bring together some of Malta's most important businesses, the biggest businesses in Malta, and persuade them, or somehow trying to engage them together to transition their operations and companies towards ESG principles and towards greener economy and operations. Do you think, looking into the RRP, do you think that as Malta, as a country, not that is ESG Malta Alliance, do you think those initiatives are helping Malta to become greener?
Well, the answer is certainly yes.
In what ways?
In many ways. Some of them are very direct, others are less direct. If I had to extract, thanks to your suggestion, on what leaders in our economy are trying to do without any help, without any support, they do it because it is the right thing to do, it is the just thing to do, it actually makes business sense, makes economic sense, safeguards the sustainability of business and therefore of jobs. Therefore, they make the transition into an ESG world. Clearly, the main stumbling block there is as one leads, one is alone, one is vulnerable, and if not supported, there is risk. Of course, CEOs would tend to certainly be accountable to their shareholders, to their directors, to their investors. And that's how one needs to look at it. So clearly, when one looks at a transition being supported by the RRF, that is certainly a good direction. However, as Celine rightfully said, spending money in projects like Interconnect Malta and their brilliant team are managing for Malta, into the battery, into the offshore wind, offshore solar, you know, all the project, the interconnector, the second one, and so on. This is brilliant news. However, we really need to put our money even tighter, close to our mouth. And that is really, while supporting people and business, and therefore everybody, in protecting against the inflationary influence of energy, and that I think nobody is against, maybe partly because of selfishness, but also partly because that's what we need to do to ensure stability. So there's a bit of both, yeah? However, maybe what we see less of is as we spend €1 million a day on this, which is serious money, which could be spent better into investment in renewables and conservation and so on, we see limited education, sensitization towards conservation of energy. Because we can generate and import a lot of green, fully solar energy from Sicily, from Europe, from our offshore wind and solar, as much as you wish, and it will be fully green, no problem. But if we guzzle that energy into manners which are irresponsible or inefficient, then we would be serving ourselves a bad deal, because we would have invested, even in green energy, in manners which is not responsible. So actually, maybe one thing that I've heard being mentioned over and over again, and I would tend to think social partners tend to agree, I certainly agree with this, is that as we do this, and as we speed forward the investment of renewables, green renewables, of course, irrespective of what comes across in the interconnector, and we can be the greenest country in Europe as soon as possible, unless we focus on conservation, especially when everybody's comfortably numb, being, enjoying the use of energy without needing to worry about the real cost of where that energy comes from, and the fact that we, from our taxes or from whichever source, are supporting fossil fuel subsidization as against the acceleration of green energy, and therefore not taking the right actions in the way we protect, we move, we transport. We use our buildings. The inventory of our buildings is probably one of the poorest, I would tend to think, in Europe. The fact that do we have the right skills to make this transition, and therefore the investment in education to be able to do this. These are the areas we really, really need to focus on: conservation, use of energy appropriately, and having the right skills to be able to benefit from, one, the cushioning effect of supporting fossil fuels, as rightfully said. Therefore, our prioritization of conservation was at the same time hopefully waiting for the fastest implementation of the green energy resource that will become through Interconnect's project's work.
That's fantastic, David, if I may, because Professor Luciano Molestano, he's been working since I can remember on trying to understand Malta's potential when it comes to wind and solar energy, and also given our size, because Ms. Gawe also mentioned insularity, we're not in mainland Europe, so we have this limitation and constraint. However, we've got plenty of sea around us, and possibly we can consider offshore opportunities. And that's my question to Professor Molestano, because you've been studying the subject for quite some time now.
Actually,
what's Malta's potential in your view?
Yeah, I was just doing the maths. Actually, 13 years.
13 years.
13 years we've been working on offshore solar. We were actually the first group anywhere in the world, it was acknowledged at a recent international conference, to launch solar panels at sea. Well, I like to tell my students a couple of things. One of them is, number one, the only time you don't have an impact on the environment is when you're dead. So we are minimizing the impact on the environment, not eliminating the impact on the environment. And number two, Malta is a strange country. Not in a bad way, but we're overpopulated, we're small, we're dry. We have a lot of sun, but if you look at the rest of Europe, it looks much more homogeneous than Malta. Malta is an outlier. And because of that, we have a problem, space. And you alluded earlier to the 12%. Actually, 12% is not that bad, given that we started from nothing.
True.
I also like to say that there are more solar panels right now in Malta than there are people. There are over 600,000 solar panels installed in Malta.
So that's close enough.
So New Zealand says they have more sheep than people. We say we have more solar panels than people. So in reality, we're not doing that badly. But I also tell students when they, we have to do 10 times as much to get to the 100% renewable. And why are we doing renewable? Well, because we're trying to limit climate change. I mean, we're, again, keeping our eye on the ball. We're trying to limit emissions. And by the way, your renewables are not emissions-free. They're just less emissions, because you still need to manufacture them. On the ocean, on land, we can probably double what we've done. Let's say, throw a number there. We can probably double 20, 24% eventually. But eventually, we're going to have to go offshore. And offshore, there's right now 2 viable technologies, which is wind and solar. Now, these terrible wars, especially the one in Ukraine, have taught us one thing. When I started 12, 13 years ago, it was all about cost. You have to bring down the cost to be equivalent to other sources of generation. But now it's also about security. I mean, wouldn't it be great if this little island did not need to rely on anybody else for gas, for fuel? And that's where offshore comes in. Offshore is not the cheapest form, of course. You have to build platforms, you have to build floating devices, but it's an infinite space, relatively infinite space. I mean, we have, on a simple map of Malta, you can say, I need the equivalent of the size of Gozo to make a farm. And you can find it, because our territorial waters are enormous. So yes, we can get to 100% renewables, of course, over a period of time. We are not moving fast enough, in my opinion. And of course, wind is going to also play an important role. They are complementary. So wind tends to blow when solar is not necessarily at its best. Like summer, solar is great. Wind is usually not. At the same time, storage is obviously hugely important, but the technology is known. Again, it's only a matter of, can we drop the cost? And the cost is dropping already. The solution is already on our roofs. I have a system with a battery at home. So the solar charges it. When the solar doesn't give me any more electricity, the battery kicks in. You just do that on a larger scale. Of course, it's worth a lot of money. But we're spending $1 million a day to subsidize fossil fuels today. We did it last year, too. And my last point, which actually ties in probably to what Suzanne will say, transport. 12%, not of electricity. Most people don't understand that. It's 12% of energy. A big chunk of that energy is going into cars, burnt fuel. And yes, EVs are nice, but EVs are only about, let's say, half as green as fossil fuel cars in Malta. Of course, when we go to fully renewable, they'll be even greener. But what about mass transit? 15 years ago, I moved back to Malta. And one of the first things I asked the then Prime Minister is, how come we haven't thought about a mass transit system in such a small island? You can go from the airport to Chirkewa in half an hour, 35 minutes, with no traffic, if it's a mass transit system. And the excuse is always cost. Well, we're spending hundreds of millions in fossil fuel. So what's the excuse now?
So, I don't know, but the low-hanging fruit from your remarks is possibly we should focus, instead of solar energy and wind energy, offshore infrastructure, we should possibly consider a mass transport system first.
I think we need to do both, because
in parallel.
We have to, because that would reduce, hopefully, car use and therefore fuel use. So it will reduce, same thing as energy efficiency, as David mentioned. Battery storage, we have to do it all. 2050 is not that far away.
No, definitely.
In fact, the 2030 target is almost alarming.
Yeah, of course.
Because you start a project today, the wait times, the delivery deadlines will probably already not get you there. So we have to do all of the above. And the sooner we start and the sooner we commit,
the better we are. Yes, sometimes it's going to be a bitter pill to swallow. And of course, politicians have a different way of looking at things than scientists. But yes, fuel will probably have to be more expensive. We probably have to pay more for our parking. And yes, eventually, the price of electricity will probably go up.
Okay.
I mean, I can't see, obviously I have no inside information, I'm just saying, but can we really believe that what we're paying today will be the same in 10 years? So, and if we consume less, that's okay.
Thanks so much, Professor Molestano. You already anticipated our next speaker, Dr. Suzanne Mas. I've noticed you've been holding this document report, which you co-authored last summer, towards a fossil-free Malta. I know you mentioned the bottlenecks with regards to the green transition in Malta. Can you mention the top 3, if I may?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Well, I have to say many of the points I wanted to make have thankfully already been made. So I think, first of all, a bottleneck is the influence of the fossil fuel subsidies that we still see today with the energy subsidies, with a blanket subsidy that actually subsidizes large energy users rather than protects those most at risk. So obviously, as an NGO promoting environmental conservation, but also social justice, we do believe there is a need for protection of households, of small businesses against massive increases in energy prices. But we believe that can be done with a very different subsidy system that would prevent energy poverty, but at the same time give a clear price signal to other players, to other households, to make that shift, to invest in insulation, to invest in renovation of their home, for businesses to shift, but also, as was mentioned by several speakers, the issue of transport. So we speak about energy efficiency, energy savings, we think of light bulbs, of insulation, but actually about half of our energy demand is for transport, and those subsidies today are also going to transport. So we're actually subsidizing petrol, diesel cars to drive more, even though we are very well aware of not only the climate change impacts, but also the impact on our daily life in terms of congestion, pollution, noise, road safety, that have all, I think, been raised by many people across the country as the top issues that we're facing. So also there is a huge potential to shift, and actually to shift relatively fast. Professor Molestano already said that. And I think what you see from the issues raised by people, overpopulation, space, geography, these are often mentioned as downsides, but actually they can be upsides. The average commute here is 5.5 kilometers. I mean, you can actually walk that in an hour. Most people...
Somehow.
Yes, I mean, not in all weather types, perhaps, but that's how short that distance is. That's half of the trips are less than that. So if you think that we actually dedicate the little space we have to modes of transport that are much more efficient, so if you have a dedicated bus lane, a bus rapid transit, a tram perhaps on some routes, you can transport 100 to 1,000 times more people in that same space than if we consider the private car. So this, as we believe, is really one of the main challenges that, I mean, for many years we have been discussing needs to be addressed here. And yeah, not only for the issues related to transport and congestion and quality of life, but also for reasons related to energy and climate change.
Dr. Mas, earlier on, Dr. Vassallo mentioned the grid and also the battery storage. These are going to be financed through REPowerEU. What's your take on that? Do you think they will help Malta in this green transition?
Definitely. I mean, this is one of the things that's also holding back sometimes renewable energy projects. So yes, of course, this is a very necessary investment, and especially as we saw last summer, very urgent as well, to make sure that we can continue living in those conditions. So not only for energy reasons, but even for health reasons. However, I mean, this is something that is, let's say, energy neutral. I mean, we need it today, but we are still relying on almost 90% fossil fuels. So yes, there is the need to invest in the grid, in the battery storage, but we also simultaneously need to significantly ramp up the investment in renewables. And okay, this year we have seen the first draft of a policy for offshore renewables, which we believe indeed for the long term is a huge potential for Malta, obviously, to invest in renewables. But on the short term, there is still a lot we can do with the technology that's already proven and tested today, especially if we reduce the energy on fossil fuel, the subsidies on fossil fuel energy. That price point will change, and we will see a massive shift to more people investing in PV panels, for example. We also see a need to address...
Something, however, we're already witnessing, as Professor Mulestano mentioned earlier, because now we have 600,000 PVs in Malta. That was something unthinkable until 15 years ago.
Yeah, so what we see now, I think, is a change also in demographic and how we live. So obviously, we've seen a huge increase in population, a difference in the type of building stock. So many more people are living in apartment blocks, in sort of multi-household situations. And there is a huge potential now, also coming from the EU, the promotion of renewable energy communities. This is included in the Renewable Energy Directive and has also been transposed in Maltese law. And this enables groups of citizens to invest together in renewable energy installations, primarily production, but it can even also invest in storage or even in ancillary services like electric vehicles. So basically, it allows people to pool that investment and to invest together in a bigger space. That can be, for example, the rooftop of a apartment block. It can also be a way to pool from household money into public buildings to ensure that we have much more PV coverage of public buildings, but also, for example, of industrial estates, of large surfaces that so far do not have solar panels yet. So this is something where we see a big potential, especially for the short term, because this is technology that already works, as we heard, 600,000 panels already. It's not a question of whether it's efficient or possible. It is. So we need to, it's more about finding the ways, how can we shift now from many households, terraced homes, people who have their own roof that already have made that shift, to now other types of households, businesses that have not yet received the right incentives for investing in that as well. And this would also ensure that that renewable energy is generated where we need it in the urban area.
Dr. Maz, that's precisely my question to Perit Shwirep, but in a more macro context, Malta rather than a household. In your view, how can we make our economy more sustainable and decarbonized?
Okay, so I think the elephant in the room here in answering your question is one of the words on the screen, which is culture, which is the one that worries me most. Because we can try to replicate many missions of many other countries, potentially in Europe, or an average of the European Union, but actually unless we have the propensity to drive such a transition, then this will stop us. And I would dare say as well that we also need to be aware of what the more mature side of our population is thinking and doing, people in leadership, and what the future generations are expecting, what their ambitions are. And there's a gap there. We can talk about not just energy, we should be talking about waste, we should talk about circular economy, we should be talking about so many other things that actually food, what we consume, our health, wellness, mental health, all of these things, yeah? And again, maybe coming back to the three little letters ESG, there's no green transition unless we are able to have the right governance structures, not at the national level only, even in the way our society functions, even the way businesses work, yeah? And the fact that we take care of each other and the social fabric of our society. And the fact that we care not only about ourselves or maybe our immediate family or potentially our employees, but even the people we influence through our actions, whether there are business actions or other actions. So it's quite complex. And in order to analyze the ability to transition an economic model or an economic ambition, let's call it a strategic ambition, so medium to long term maybe is the right way to look at this, which is beyond the political cycles of a country. So let's be clear, it's an easy way of looking at it, probably reassuring as well, is that we need, at that point, 2050, anyone in his 20s, anybody in her 20s, will be in her 50s then. Think about it. So we really need to think of what country we need to have that matches the ambitions of a 20-year-old, or maybe younger. And this is a challenge, because most of us are not able to do that. Most of us would rarely tangibly do anything about it. So actually, we have, in any disruption, this is disruption. We can talk about, climate change, Israel, Ukraine, COVID, and many more that will probably happen. This is disruption, inflation at the moment. For any entrepreneur, for any CEO in the room or anyone following us, this is fantastic, a fantastic moment for great change. But it needs leadership, it needs clear thought, it needs long-term thinking. And people who collaborate rather than compete, collaboration, to be able to bring back the best that we can provide. I mean, when the Knights of St. John, Parliamentary Secretary was talking about Valletta and what the Knights did and the Vatican did and all that, that was an incredible, disruptive situation for Malta that landed us this. Now, and we're proud of it, yes? And this is what gives us value today. So the value we'll be able to measure in 2050, 2060 is what we collectively are able to decide in a collaborative fashion all together, thinking of future generations, because the transition is very fast, much faster than it used to be 400, 500 years ago, I'm sure. But will bring about, the new, the better Malta, the better people, happier people, healthier people, people with serious focus on wellness. All these are what we really want to achieve through a green transition. So the green transition is not only about panels and about solar and wind and these things, yes? Of course, that's part of it. But it's really a change of way of life, and therefore, this is the hardest part, a change in culture. This is the bit that worries me, keeps me up at night, to be honest. But maybe the best way to deal with this is to focus on future generations who have a clearer view of what this should look like, respect that, maybe even the unborn, if I can extend it. And be true to ourselves and collaborate more than speak and
I don't know, Perichwira, but while you're saying all this, I don't know if you're framing that RRP is the flagship initiative of Next Generation EU.
Thank you for reminding me.
This is truly fitting because
thank you for reminding me.
The guys in Brussels, they had incredible foresight in identifying a keyword.
Because it is that.
All these projects, reforms and investments are precisely trying to target our next generation.
With responsibility on our shoulders. Yeah.
I'd like to, before opening the floor to our attendees, I'd like to ask Ms. Gawe, because sporadically we mentioned some reforms, investments related to the Repower EU chapter within the Malta's RRP, but possibly you're well positioned to outline the key reforms and investments in the plan which will help Malta in this green transition.
Thanks. Well, reforms essentially is on the permitting. So how do you ensure that there will be more renewables, quicker renewables, easier renewables to be built, both onshore and offshore? And I think one important one, even though there are more solar panels than sheep in New Zealand, it's important to facilitate that, and this obligation to have solar panels on roofs is an important step. So those are reforms in there. You also have, for the transport part, reforms in public transport, so allowing, and here the Maltese government has even gone beyond what was required in the RRP by making public transport free for the holders of the Tanzania card, and that is extremely important as well to change this culture, because I fully subscribe to what you just said. Change of culture is important. People have to move to different means of transport. So on the reform side, on the investment side, the plan is really looking at all the things we mentioned. It looks at the grid, it looks at the storage, it looks at the energy efficiency with the renovation of public and private buildings, and it looked at the transport by financing of 102 new e-buses to facilitate public transport. And of course, the e-vehicle transformation, which is part of the solution as well. So as you can see, it tackles every element, trying to accelerate the transition that will have to go beyond the RP. It's an acceleration, it's a help. It's not, of course, the end of it, because the needs are much bigger than what the RP can do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Gawe. So I'd like to just invite you all to just share your thoughts, views, exclusively on the green transition, so the green aspects within RRP. So feel free just to raise your hands and ask any questions you might want to ask. We've got Paul Abela, President of the Malta Chamber of SMEs. He'd like to share his thoughts, so I don't know if we have a microphone for Mr. Abela. We do have, so just hold on a second, Mr. Abela. So here we go.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me here. I've got 2 points. As regards the PV panels, as a chamber, we have partnered with Water Services Corporation, and we did 3 water reservoirs, 1 Randy and 2 in Gozo. And we are producing 3 kilowatts in this. But I think even the country putting PVs, we're slow. You know, the bureaucratic thing to do things. There are so many roofs. In this has got, I don't know, I'm a director at Malta Enterprise. The roofs of all the factories in Malta, it's massive. But then we started about 15 years ago, they wanted €3 per square meter because the roofs belongs to Indis. And then Indis, and then there is Malta Enterprise. You know, we have this bureaucratic thing. We, as it's called Malta Energy with Water Services Corporation, we're ready to do more. We have invented a scheme where we issued a tender and all our members, you know, participated and they did the PVs themselves. We did for 20 years. They're going to maintain them, clean them and whatever.
That's great.
And just Malta Energy just made the tender possible for our importers and members as well of our chamber, and we can do more.
So, Mr. Abela, you're calling on the authorities to possibly reduce the red tape when it comes to...
No, because it have to be speeded up. You know, there should be a policy, and that policy should be implemented by everyone, and we take the plunge, and we can do more. And
Fantastic.
Another issue which I want to say about the transportation. Transportation in Malta, you know, it's a bit of a problem. Professor Mulya.
A bit of a problem?
You know, not a bit of a no, because mass transportation here in Malta, it doesn't work. We're too small. We were talking about underground. Can you imagine an underground? In London and all those big places, you've got millions. We don't have the millions here. We don't have the numbers. As regards, you know, something has to be done. I represent the haulers at the port. We have 250 trailers every morning at the Freeport going out to factories and warehouses to deliver goods. So that is one thing. But then, you know, the government has introduced the free transport. You know, you don't pay on the bus. But the numbers didn't go up. It seems that we are not. The last thing, if I can spare, it's as regards electricity generation. We do have generation. We're going to have the second interconnector. But we have a proposal to the Prime Minister when we met him about the budget. The distribution is the problem. You have Enel Malta now, which is 25% owned by a Chinese company. So their interest is not our interest now. So we have a problem. We told the Prime Minister, have a committee, a technical committee, which he will spread out around Malta and Gozo what needs to be done, distribution-wise, substations, and so on. And that is being, and they monitor, not Enel Malta will monitor, because here, you know, politically as well, you have 2 substations, where should I do it? In my locality or in the other locality? So I think this committee, technical committee, will draw a plan of how our distribution, because last summer, the main problem was distribution. Because the power station, there was the interconnector, there was the power station with 400 or I don't know how many megawatts. So the supply was there. The distribution lacked. And I think we need more investment in the distribution side.
Somehow the good news, Mr. Abela, is listening to Dr. Vassallo earlier on, thanks to RRP, we're going to strengthen the distribution as well. Am I right, Dr. Vassallo?
There are funds for the distribution reinforcement, yes, but as I said previously, it's NMOL, the distribution system operator, who is handling that part of the funds. So it's not Interconnect.
In your remit as Interconnect Malta? It's distinctly, right?
It's distinct. Interconnect Malta is handling, as I said, the projects of interconnection and battery storage in this case. And yeah, I mean, but what we hear today is also the importance of electrification. And it's increasing everywhere. I mean, since we're going even in transport, we're going to electrification, it puts a lot more pressure on the supply and the distribution of electricity. And it shows that, you know, putting these funds also to good use, in our case with battery energy storage, I think is a good way forward to green the energy and to meet the demands of the consumers in general.
Dr. Engineer Joseph Vassallo, I think we can possibly take one brief comment. We have time for that, but otherwise we'll just have a quick coffee break unless anyone wants to share his views. So once again, thank you so much to Ms. Celine Gawe, Perit David Chwirep, Dr. Engineer Joseph Vassallo, Professor Luciano Molestano, and Dr. Suzanne Mas for your insights. We'll be back in roughly 15-20 minutes, so enjoy your coffees, croissants, and anything else. We'll be back shortly. Thank you.